Today I have a couple of quick announcements. Then we're going to introduce the viewing of the scenes from Bumblebee, which will be our film for this and the next week. And we'll watch the scenes, we'll pause to open up the discussion. I'll ask you if you still have your participation form to write down a few notes on the back of that page. If you weren't here on Tuesday or you forgot that, I have extra copies. Announcements, just briefly. I was able finally to post the videos for last Friday and Tuesday of this week, in case you need those. I haven't had time to review your assignments because, as you can imagine, we are restarting the Concorso d'Eleganza for this Sunday. The weather seems to be nice. If you're on campus or you live nearby, come and see the car show between 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. Parking lot 2 between the Wang Center and Tapman Hall. And there is the big parking lot 1 right across if you come with a car. So I'll get to your homework assignments as soon as possible and your comments, your participation notes as well. I brought with me some flyers. You know, I'm the director of the Center for Italian Studies. We have opportunities, funding opportunities, sometimes small amounts, for students doing Italian. You don't have to be an Italian major or minor, but if you take Italian at least at 112, the second semester level or above, you can try to apply for those funds and awards. I have several copies. If you want, just come to the desk at the end of the class. Of course, I'll circulate the attendance during the film. And you know that there is a presentation devoted to Bumblebee. Each film has 1 or 2 pages devoted to it with quotes, with notes, with links if you're interested, and other stuff. For example, the script if you want to read it, or reviews of the film, or even, since I do cinema studies, I include for the films that I analyze frames taken at usually 1 or 2 second intervals so that one can see how a scene has been shot, the camera angles, the editing, etc. That's the technical way to analyze a film. Of course, we're analyzing the story, the characters, right? At the same time, keep in mind that this is a nice little film. Bumblebee came out in 2018. The director is Travis Knight. He hasn't done a lot of film, but he knows what he's doing. And what I like about this film is that it's full of visual cues. Instead of telling the stories through dialogues or a voiceover, they're really trying to get you into the story with visual cues, or they're trying to externalize the situation, the troubles, the issues faced by the characters with the help of elements in their stories, right? So their inner world is translated into objects, and especially cars, right? You'll find several vehicles in the story, but just to give you an example, one of the key vehicles is an old Corvette that Charlie, the female protagonist, was restoring with the help of her father. And then she lost her father, and that project was interrupted. At the beginning of the film, we see her trying to resume that project and failing. But really, the car that you see in the garage is not only symbolic of the relationship she had with her father, but it's also the externalization of the project of working on herself, transitioning from her role, her status as a teenager into adulthood, which is something that will happen through the film. One other pattern that is very clear in this film and that is typical of commercial films is the fact that the film is based on repetition and variations, plus big scenes, because it's a big budget film. So as you can expect, there are big fights with digital effects, with these huge transformer robots fighting each other, fighting with units of the American Army, etc. But you see a clear pattern of repetition because there are several mornings in the life of Charlie through the film, and you see Charlie waking up at the beginning of the film, and she's disappointed with herself. She's not happy with her life. She's not happy at the prospect of going to school where she's not popular, and she feels isolated or even excluded, even though she longs for different levels of socialization, including a romantic relationship. And then morning after morning, you see the psychological evolution of the character. So there you have the repetition, and of course that helps with the production because they shoot all these scenes in one setting, and of course they can just spend 1 or several weeks there and shoot all of those scenes. And then the variations will be Charlie going to different places, to one beach, to one cliff, to the house of a friend, where they play a prank to this friend, etc. On the web page devoted to the film, you find this picture of notes that I put on the board in the past, and I'll use that to illustrate the themes of the film. First, let me summarize it briefly. So, as I said, this film is part of a series, a franchise that has done very well commercially in terms of profit. It is the 6th installment in the Transformers series that began in 2007 with another nice film with Shia LaBeouf, and who was the protagonist, the female protagonist, maybe Megan Fox. But of all the Transformer films, this one, Bumblebee, is by far the nicest and doesn't require profound knowledge of the whole series. It's not like Star Wars. In fact, this film was created as a prequel. So the characters, especially the human characters, don't have a direct connection with the other films. And as I suggested, many realized in their reviews that this is a true remake of the Herbie series. Not only because you find a yellow Volkswagen Beetle, but also because you have that kind of relationship that is not so edgy with the technological device. At the beginning of this film, we see a series of scenes that I'm not showing today because we don't have time for everything. We are on a distant planet called Cybertron. On this planet, two species of sentient robots are fighting each other. One group is the Autobots, and the Autobots are the good guys. They're called Transformers and Autobots because they have the ability to transform into vehicles. So they can go from the shape of a fighting robot that looks like an android into the shape of a vehicle. In fact, they have the ability to reprogram themselves and to take the shape of any vehicle they can observe and study long enough. So there is a war on this planet between the evil Decepticons and the good Autobots, and the Autobots are losing the war. And therefore, the leader, one of the leaders in the middle of this chaotic battle where Autobots and are being slaughtered by the Decepticons, one of the leaders, Optimus Prime, gives this little transformer, who's not as mighty a warrior as his friends, a mission to go and find a planet where they can all transfer to regroup and start a new life, or go back to the fight with the Decepticon and defeat them. So this bot called B-127 lands on planet Earth, but he is being chased by a Decepticon. On planet Earth, he is B-127 first pursued by a unit of the American Army led by a harsh officer played by John Cena. Escapes, and when he thinks that he can get away, a Decepticon arrives, and there is another brutal fight between this big evil Decepticon and the nice guy B-127. At the end of this fight, B-127 is practically dying, and he realizes that he has to shut down his system in order to survive. He scans the landscape, the horizon, looking for a vehicle so that he can morph into a vehicle and be less visible, right? Because as long as he is a small vehicle, nobody will think much of him, but he cannot escape the attention of the humans as a bigger transformer. Finds a Beetle, Volkswagen Beetle, and scans it with his powerful robotic brain, turns into this Volkswagen Beetle, and that's it. We at the beginning of the movie, we don't see him past this point. Past this point are the scenes where we meet Charlie. Charlie is a high schooler. She lives in Northern California near San Francisco. From the place where she lives, we can see the Golden Gate Bridge in the distance, and she's not happy. She lives in a family where her mother has remarried or found another companion who's not really like Charlie's father and doesn't treat her. It's not that he doesn't treat her like a daughter, it's that he treats her like a child, doesn't see the adult in her. And this idea of something we have inside that is not completely visible or can be manifested in certain circumstances is matched within the storyline of the Transformer, who can transform into vehicles that can be powerful, fast, fancy, or can be plain, and within Charlie, who as a teenager is at the cost of this transformation. Some see her as a child, and some other characters see the adult that she can become, that she can transform into. So one of the ways that Charlie gets spare parts for the Corvette that she's trying to restore even after her father passed, one of the places she goes is a junkyard, and there she finds respect, because there they realize that she's an expert in car mechanics, and she works there in exchange for those spare parts. And one day she notices this abandoned old Volkswagen Beetle, and she ends up getting the Beetle from the junkyard, takes the Beetle home, places it in the garage, which is, together with her bedroom, the part of the house that gives her the opportunity to be herself. And in fact, in the garage, you don't see the family car, the station wagon driven by her stepfather. That place is the place for the Corvette and then for the Beetle. Once she takes the Beetle into the garage, she will examine in the car, she will realize that inside the Beetle there is this creature, this transformer. And in front of her eyes, B27 will transform into a humanoid robot that Charlie will call Bumblebee, right? Because of the color, etc. And also because when she found the Beetle, there were a lot of bees flying around this old car. So the two of them establish a secret friendship. And they help each other. Because Bumblebee has lost some of its powers in the fight with the Decepticon. He has lost his voice and has lost some of its warrior skills. So she has to find its way into a new life. So she trains him to survive on planet Earth, and he becomes a mentor, not exactly a new father, but certainly a mentor and a guide to her, pushing her to get out of her shell, to be herself in public. Because in public, she's shy, she's afraid of being bullied by others, and she's the target of bullying by others. But of course, she's stronger. She can be stronger. She just needs someone to make her realize how strong she can be. By the end of the film, both the Autobots and the Decepticons will come to Earth. The Bumblebee will help defeat the Decepticons and help the Autobots relocate on Earth. So at the end of the film, Bumblebee is acknowledged by Optimus Prime, the leader of this group of surviving Autobots, as a true warrior. And Charlie has finally finished her work on the Corvette, and she has also found a new role, a new identity within her family, where she's now being seen as an adult, as someone who's independent and also has value, has worth. So we find here a pattern that we've seen somehow in the Love Bug, but it's a clear pattern that will be used after the Love Bug during the 1970s, 80s, and later in films based on the friendship or the interaction between a human and the technological device that is also sentient, that is also alive, that has a conscience. That is to say, working on the car becomes a metaphor for working on the self. The interaction with the technology gives both the human, the user, the owner, and the technology a chance to transform, to grow, to realize their full potential. And in fact, after the next week, the film after that on week 5 will be Christine, which is a horror movie / comedy, because there are elements of comedy too in that movie, following exactly that pattern. At the beginning of the movie, the premise that we will see this morning establishes the main character, the character that will interact with technology, as a loser, as someone who's failing at life. The same way that Jim Douglas, the driver of Herbie, the number 53 Volkswagen Beetle of the Walt Disney movie from 1968, has a failing career at driving, is almost about to retire from racing. And then you have the encounter with the technology, the building of the relationship, and the transformative power of this interaction with the technology. So that the whole film becomes a big metaphor for the idea that technological products we interact with, we accept in our lives, can change us, can change who we are, can change our public persona and our identity. So I place the two characters in here to show the similarities, because these similarities represent the foundation of their relationship. Both B-127 or Bumblebee and Charlie have a new environment to face. They're challenged in their existence by the need to adapt to a context that has some new elements. Of course, B-127 is on an entirely new planet, right? Facing an entirely new species, humans. And Charlie is in a new family, and a family where she's not fully integrated in her full capacity as a person. Again, she's not being mistreated. They just don't see her the way she really is, and they don't see her potential, they don't see her core identity, and therefore they cannot help her develop into that person. And again, the visual parallel of this would be this rusty, dusty, old Corvette, which will turn into this beautiful, shiny, powerful restored Corvette. And that's the metaphor that aligns with the visual, symbolic representation of the transformation that Charlie goes through. Both B-127 and Charlie have suffered a loss. Of course, the loss of Charlie is more direct and bigger. Her father died. And we see at some point an old videotape, because Charlie used to be a diver. Diving was her sport, and her father was encouraging her. And that's another area where Charlie was affirming her leadership as a very good diver, but lost her path after her father died. She stopped training to be a diver. Of course, you will see then next week how B-127 will help her go back into diving, act as a mentor in reference to that as well. Of course, B-127's loss is he has lost his home planet. And he has lost contact with his group, right? Because again, he cannot communicate with his fellow Autobots, and therefore there is a loss in his life as well. As far as the transformation, the transformative power of this relationship interaction will help Charlie turn into a fully developed adult, right? So we know that Charlie has qualities, but those qualities were quashed and then kept hidden after his father died. And the relationship with the bot will help her achieve that. And for B-127, the immediate goal is, of course, coming back to life. The first transformation in his story is that Charlie will make it come alive again, working on this Volkswagen Beetle, because B-127 has been parked in that parking lot. I forgot to add that the film takes place in 1987. I don't know if I said that. And then the subsequent transformation for B-127, renamed Bumblebee by Charlie, and you understand the power of naming someone who enters your life, the next step will be to become a warrior, right? Because, as I said, B-127 is a fearful, weaker droid at the beginning of the film, and by the end, instead is acknowledged as the one who has provided a new home for the entire tribe of Autobots and therefore has achieved a heroic goal in his own community, and he gets to be seen as a powerful bot. They both go through a series of vehicles. As I said, the bot can transform in any vehicle he can set his eyes on, and therefore, during the part of the film we don't see, while being chased by John Cena and his soldiers, his special unit soldiers, he turns into a yellow Jeep, a traditional World War II Jeep. Then he transforms into a yellow Beetle, and as such is parked in a junkyard because he is inactive, right? Dormant, and comes to life thanks to Charlie. By the end of the film, he transforms into a powerful Camaro from the early 1970s. And there you have, in a scene that we'll watch next week, you have a significant line by Charlie, who says, once he transforms into Camaro, he says, "You could have been that. I could have been seen in that," right? But it's the same, it's just a symbol for the transformation, for being able at the end of the story of bringing to light into the world, to the eyes of the public, your true core, which of course is more powerful than whatever you have shown in the past. And as far as Charlie, we see her initially driving a scooter, but that's again the externalization of the fact that she's not being valued, appreciated, seen as someone with value. It's a scooter that others would make fun of, right? In fact, she's even forced to wear this hippie-styled helmet by her mother that makes her even more ridiculous. So the scooter represents the stage at the beginning of the film in which we find Charlie as a social failure, as a person who's not fully realized and feels that when people see her, they don't see her true self, they don't see anything with value. Then she'll be driving the Beetle, and there you see that she's more secure, more confident. At least she has a car. And this is a good step. Other people see the Beetle as a car that is not, especially since in 1987, the Beetle is an older car, nothing fancy, but it's a step, it's something, a step ahead, something that confirms Charlie, tells Charlie that she's on her way to change her life. And finally, the external, the visual symbol of her transformation, the restored Corvette that we'll see in a frame occupy the whole frame in all its might. And there we'll also see her almost like a woman. The female actress really did a great job with this character. Of course, I've said how Bumblebee finds a new role in his group, and at the end of the film, Charlie finds a new role within her family. She's being respected now as and trusted as an independent person, not just a child that you tell what to do. And overall, one of the major patterns in the scenes, in the story, is the idea of seeing someone else and being seen. And in fact, you find mirrors being used for that. At the very beginning, you'll see Charlie looking herself in the mirror in the bathroom while getting ready for school and not being happy about herself, not being happy at what she sees. You will see Charlie later on getting under the Beetle, and the eyes of the face of B-127 light up and they look at each other. And you'll see plenty of scene where Charlie is in public, in front of friends from her school, and what's important is the way they see her, the way they look at her, and vice versa. So this is enough of an introduction. I'll start the film now. As I said before, if you still have your page from Tuesday, just put some comments about the film on the back.